basically have is you have two organizational structures that have existed for as long, they're as part of the human experience as humanity itself. In fact, they may be what it is that defines us as human beings. And those two organizational structures that we have, and we use them in various different ways throughout our daily life. We don't even recognize it. But it's how we assess our reality as social creatures interacting with each other. And the first one is consensus. Mm-hmm. And consensus is, there's so many examples of consensus. Language itself is an example of consensus. Why do the letters CAT, why are those pronounced cat, and why does it signify this little animal that's walking in front of me? Mm-hmm. Who the hell knows? It's just that we all over time have accepted it, and consensus evolves. So we have a great many things like that. Nature reflects that as well. Why do we have five fingers on our hand? That's consensus. Yeah. Over time, nature has decided that's from an evolutionary standpoint, right? So evolution, that's the first thing. When we talk about consensus, we're talking about an evolutionary model and an organizational structure that is basically based on the idea of, well, that's just how we all do it. Mm-hmm. That's how we've always done it. That's how we do it. And that changes very, very slowly. I mean, you think of how long it takes for a language to change from one language, we have a root of Romance languages in Latin. Like, how long does it take to move from Latin to English? And it's not that anybody's like saying, oh, you have to do this, or when does it split? When does Portuguese split from Spanish, and how and why? Who knows? That's just consensus, okay? So that's the first organizational structure. And the second organizational structure, or the way of defining reality, is authority. Mm-hmm. And what authority ends up breeding a chain of command, which looks like a hierarchy. Mm-hmm. Now, authority is very, very useful in certain situations. And one of the reasons that it's useful is because it's very fast to change. Because all you do is you send an order, we're moving left, and you send it down the chain of the hierarchy. One man can say, move left, and an army moves left because you have a chain of command. Yeah. And that same man can immediately say, no, retreat. And everybody retreats because you have a chain of command of authority. You start here, here's authority here that answers to less authority here, that answers to less authority here, that answers to less authority here. And that hierarchy evolved. Again, the hierarchical structure evolved from consensus. Yeah. Right? So it's an evolutionary structure, but that allows for authority. And at the same time, in the consensus model, you also at times need authority, because whenever something new comes in that you don't know, that you don't have an answer to by consensus, you need to look to an authority. So it's like, while I may know that CAT is cat, if I'm walking through the Amazon and some animal goes running by that I've never seen and that looks crazy, well, there's going to need to be an authority to name that, right? A zoologist or a biologist. And then he says, oh, that's a ring-tailed lemur, and I'm like, oh, ring-tailed lemur, great. Well, thank God I had authority, because within my culture of consensus, we don't even have a word for that in our language.